Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 8. Welcome back from your break. This week, we are looking at the things we do with popular culture. You should be already aware what popular culture is, cultural items, cultural icons, products, things from movies, books, different genres, films that are made popular by a large group of people or a certain social community. So what do we do with things like that? We're going to look at some notes that do hopefully help us understand how we position ourselves in a society in relation to popular culture, how it helps build certain communities and create certain forms of communication. Now, we look at Henry Jenkins's work, and he wants to talk about how fan culture is an important part of fan culture itself. It's a way of build. It is a description of a social community, and three aspects of how fan behaves is by being really close to the medium that you follow. It could be a song, it could be a celebrity, it could be a film, it could be a TV series, it could be a book, it could be a podcast. It could be anything like that. It could be a brand of item that you wear, you use, a brand of a company. So the closeness we are to it. Rereading is another behavior we engage in. Rereading means we go back to it, we interpret it again, we watch it again, we read the book again, we listen to the music again. And what sort of meanings are derived at the second or third time we do that? The third one, I think we all know as fans of many items in modern society, we integrate that elements of that popular culture, that cultural product into our lives. So it could mean we dress like a character we like. We have a poster of our favorite boy band, girl band. We have been sucked into the capitalistic society of merchandising. We buy toys, figurines, we download apps. And that's not just those physical things we do in our communication as well. How do we integrate fandom in our lives? We speak like our favorite character. We draw funny lines from the Big Bang Theory. We want to be like Jon Snow, maybe not, or maybe in Game of Thrones. So we aspire to maybe even be like the favorite character or aspire to want to achieve the same goals as this particular song, or we want to look like a particular way of a favorite Instagram celebrity that we follow. So think about how you engage with your favorite popular culture. It could be K-pop, it could be Bollywood, it could be the Western media, it could be European trends, or even South Asian or other Asian different sort of popular culture or text. Now, one of the points that he brings up is how do we treat this popular culture? Like we say, do we reread the text, we download the poster, we talk about it in our everyday lives with our friends on text or in person? Do we also treat um, a more high culture the same way as we treat some of the things that we watch on Netflix, like Money Heist and things like that? Do we treat Shakespeare in the same way? Do we follow opera and pick up on certain elements or language or lyrics from opera and incorporate it into our daily conversation? Is that something we do? So Jenkins looks at how come we treat certain high culture differently and certain low or mass culture differently. So it's just perhaps accessibility. We look at how high culture is only, if you remember, is only accessed by a number of people, a minority, um, differentiated by class, maybe gender, income, and even accessibility in terms of you can only go to a particular country to listen to this brand of opera, access these types of wine, read these types of text because it's very exclusive. So that could also be one of the reasons why we don't treat high culture the same as popular culture. Now, I'm just going to quickly look at some notes here. So we know that we have elements of popular culture we follow. Do you now realize at this point, after studying this unit and maybe also observing popular culture around you, they've been commodified, they've been pimped up to be entertaining. How fans do fans take to that? Do fans question the purity of a certain cultural product? Has it been tainted by commercialism? The other thing about popular culture is we feel like we have a special relationship with a particular icon, celebrity, boy band, girl band, particular group, maybe a screenwriter. We feel we have that special relationship, and then we tend to develop a sense of ownership towards it. So we may defend a particular character or his position in the show very, very strongly against someone else who takes on another role. So that integration happens, and you may not realize it, but now, you know, with sort of this awareness, you could see, is that how I behave with a particular show, a particular text, a particular following that I have for somebody in the public sphere? Now, it doesn't always have to be entertainment. I mean, some political figures are part of popular culture. I mean, Greta Thunberg is quite a name in itself. Malala is another. So it could be also political. It could also be a following for a particular activist because you have certain ideological following or beliefs. Parasocial interaction, we are reminded again of how we develop these relationships with what we read, people or characters that we read about, we watch about, we listen about. So we have that sort of one-way interaction, and it's also aided by the different communications technologies that we engage in. We're going to also consider that fan culture, if you look at the last line of this note, of this slide, how fan culture challenges the notion of passive audience theory. So if you remember Bioka, you remember that, what is his name? Bauer. Bauer talks about how audiences are impervious to influence. They're not affected by influence. They're completely passive. They receive. And also it's a very Orwellian concept of just accepting dictatorship, accepting messages delivered by, you know, the mediums that are shown to us, that we watch, we see, we engage with. This fandom, fan culture challenges that notion. So what does it say about our contemporary pop culture? That we are pretty darn active. We take part in appropriating certain elements of that cultural product into our lives, into our daily communications. Jenkins also, on my other notes, will just share with you. He also wants to talk about wants to make us realize there's a greater appreciation of fandom, and then what is it that we do? Do we spend excessive amounts of money following a particular favorite popular culture? Do we behave quite nerdy and obsessive? Do we also have that geek-like behavior? So if you are a Star Trek fan, a Star Wars fan, and even perhaps even a gaming platform that you're part of, you may tend to invest and be quite heavily invested emotionally, monetarily into that fan culture, and he wants to look at discussions of that. And a fandom is a way of developing a social community. So in itself, it produces its own cultural meaning, its own cultural signals that other fans will understand. So if you gather with people of the same like-minded people who enjoy the same medium as you do, you find your conversations are quite hearty, quite rich, probably maybe argumentative, but you develop a sense of community there and another set of signals within your tribe. So let me just move this here. So Jenkins describes fandom as an institution of theory and criticism, a semi-structured space. So there are interpretations, evaluations of text are proposed, debated, negotiated, and then readers speculate about the nature of mass media and their own relationship. So this falls back into that construction of a social community within, you know, the larger context of society, within your own cohort, but even smaller, not necessarily with your classmates, but within people within your virtual community. Do you have that bond? Do you have that connection? If you're part of a particular fan culture. Now he raises something important about fans and how they behave, and he uses this term a lot in the reading. If you find textual poaching, it's not really a big word, but if you know what poaching means, it literally means taking away from the text, you know. And text doesn't mean it's always words. It can be photos, it can be visuals, it can be moving pictures, it can be sound, right? Any other sort of elements that present content to you, you can consider it as text. And fans do that a lot. How do you appropriate something from something you've been following into your lives, and then you incorporate that into conversation, like we said, into what you wear, how you present, maybe even how you design a certain thing, you know. And when you're presenting your what you call that, not presenting, but how you express yourself, that's the word. So what is it that you poach from your favorite text? And there's always the argument of we move on to McLaughlin's reading, and he does analyze the concept of zines a lot, and how zines are a smaller version of magazines, and now they're developed very specifically by an elite group of fans. And it doesn't mean elite means differentiated by class or wealth, but a particular very set of strongly bonded or fans that are really completely immersed and into a particular popular culture. And these sort of fans challenge the notion that mass media is seen as an ideological apparatus. It is. If you remember how the printing press was considered perhaps a propaganda tool during the World War II, how the Nazi Germany used publications to try and spread a particular set of propaganda, how people even do it today. Look at who owns you know, Rupert Murdoch and the set of values he pushes out through his own set of media, and let me think. I think locally you see which the government agencies here, or the government owns a particular brand of media, and what sort of ideology it pushes out, a certain narrative, a certain sort of opinions. So fan culture actually resists that, and it challenges the notion that mass media is just used plainly, simply as a ideological tool, which again comes back to making us an active audience. Okay, so in McLaughlin's reading, he talks about how fans tend to read against the grain. So I'm sure you've engaged in your own conversations about certain reports you've read, certain texts you've engaged in, that you criticize, you maybe express disbelief, or you take it apart amongst your elite group of or elite community. Then you dissect it, you question it, you perhaps look at why is this text written a certain way. We as fans do not believe that, you know, it should be this, etc. So very simply put, like say Fox News condemns the Black Lives Matters movement, or rather Fox News goes on, let's just talk about the US presidential election. The Fox News goes on a real big tangent of an anti-Biden speech, for instance, anti-Biden propaganda. And who owns Fox News? Who do they support? Who do they push? Who they sort of throw their money or they put their money, who do they lobby for? Who do they support? You know, it's a Republican favored news channel. And it doesn't matter if there's accuracy or truth, that is the ideological platform, the ideological issues it wants to push out and to get more people to vote for the Trump side of things. And fans of firstly, fans of Biden won't probably watch Fox News, but to perhaps give themselves I don't know, a chance to look at the dark side or the other side for argument's sake, they would not fall into that sort of they would not fall for that sort of narrative. They would not believe that side of argument. So it's too simplistic to say that the media just pushes forth whatever the owners want to push or whatever interest they're trying to support or convey. Fans themselves are pretty rebellious. They will choose to use certain tags when they want to. They choose to ignore. They choose to just marginalize whatever content they choose. So they can be resistant, and that comes back to the question about being an active audience member. So it's quite more complex than that. And elite fans who engage in particular, I don't know, they do role play. I mean, cosplay is one example of a very elite group of fans, even though it reaches out to a lot of parts of the world. But it's a particular certain fan behavior that comes with that sort of cosplay. Even role-playing games, if you sit and play, you remember physical role-playing games, everybody gathers around the desk, strategizing, rolling dice, discussing, that sort of very elite behavior pronounces the high media literacy of that group. So they're very aware of the texts that are involved in the medium they engage in. They're very aware of the culture, the rituals that are involved in that social community they engage in. So they're not going to be duped by some sort of political and propaganda tool. So they're very, very highly and engaged into their favorite media text, as you already know. Let's look at then the next thing. So what fans do are important for the development of certain industries. As you know, fans can make or break a particular item of popular culture. Fans can really drive bands like BTS to the heights of stardom, and fans can really, claw its way and bring and really ruin a celebrity or a star from rising to further heights. And I think if you do follow, I think there was some time ago when Trump had the Tulsa rally, and how the BTS army got involved in overshadowing or sort of flooding the social media space with particular text. That's how powerful fans can be. And aided by communication technology, you don't even have to be physically there to destroy or to influence a particular type of popular culture. So it's communication technology has also changed, obviously, the way we behave, whether you can call it fandom, whether you can sometimes call it mob behavior. It can get quite ugly. It can be very powerful to sort of shape, influence, impact a particular popular culture. How Game of Thrones, for instance, has been maybe mainstream. If you do watch that series, I felt that it was brought a bit more. I mean, there's a lot of dilution in the last series and the last two series. It just went away from the book. The book wasn't even written, but the complexity of it was sort of watered down. Why? I don't know. If you're like me, you're a British drama fan, you're a British media fan, you notice how British series are tied into 4 episodes, so 6 episodes compared to, say, something like, say, The Good Wife that has 23 episodes for 17 seasons. Grey's Anatomy doesn't seem to ever end. Why do series get prolonged for the American audience, but yet in Europe or in, say, the UK, they're written very tightly, they're produced with such high quality, and which maybe in some cases with such complexity, whether it doesn't have to be heavy or in-depth, but it could be humorous, but yet has so many different production values compared to for the American audience. So it doesn't mean that the American audience needs dumbing down. I'm not saying that, but maybe commercially it works. The producers and TV and networks want to stretch the series for several arms length to make more money. Simple as that, right? So another fandom culture another fan culture you can definitely look at is football. Football has been, you know, football is the beautiful game that everyone watches or at least understands. And the fan culture that's attached to it, we can see how the strong following, the loyalty, the fights, the fierce bidding, the money that's being thrown in this industry. So driven by fans, how it has shaped certain careers of certain football icons, making or breaking a certain person's reputation. So it really looks like it really looks as if that the fans then have taken ownership of something that we see as the beautiful game. How have they taken ownership? And you can look at the different tranches. So what other types of popular culture do you think has that sort of enormous effect on society? You know, aside from K-pop and BTS, what other fan culture? Michael Jackson is one. We remember him to today. Like we say, Star Wars is like, you know, sort of withstood some test of time. A 19-year-old can have a conversation about Star Wars with someone who's in their 50s. So they understand the genre, they understand the brand. So it's interesting that if you analyze how fan culture works. Let's look at so let's look at, I think one thing I wanted to raise about McLaughlin as well. It's not a simple thing as fans just idolizing a particular player, media, movie, but you know, we're not considered as dupes. We're not considered as being needed to be dumbed down to. We're not considered as passive. But we're not intellectually, fans are not intellectually inferior to academics who sit around and pontificate about Shakespeare or Balzac or the latest, I don't know. I'm not into high culture, so it makes it hard to find interesting examples, but they're not into, they're not expected to adopt that sort of intellectual superiority over someone else. But fans are a powerful cultural a powerful consequence, effect of cultural production. So if you kind of look at, so this slide further talks about football, and this slide also talks about commercialization of certain popular culture, which you can see in your own following of your particular favorite popular culture. But this slide also talks about, at one point, if you do follow Nirvana and Kurt Cobain's grunge band, it was huge in the early 90s, maybe late 80s, early 90s, even early 90s, and how there was this huge following of attire, not washing their hair, wearing t-shirts, singing really down, gritty grunge music. And you can see how that has taken the following, and how industry has tried to capitalize or infiltrate that sort of fan culture. After Kurt Cobain committed suicide, where is grunge music today? Has it morphed into something else? Do you see that same trend happening across your favorite brand of music? We're not quite sure, right? So it's something for you to look at. So most importantly, being a fan of a favorite popular product, it could also stem from being able to fulfill a certain fantasy, to be close to someone you idolize or love or have a crush on. It's pretty conventional. Is it a form of escapism? Jenkins also talks about our favorite characters as being something that's constructed on the screen, but also we see them as very real. So that's why you can see screaming girls during Beatles concert. You know, who else? Or even what's that? Maroon 5. What's the fellow's name? Adam Levine's, you know, taking off his shirt on stage, and this drives women wild. why do people behave that way? Because they see them as someone real and probably someone they can have a relationship with, touch, see, feel, experience. So it just goes beyond just idolizing and admiring, right? So fandom, it's like a very real thing we all experience. And just keep in mind that it's a really significant social space. How do we then take part in it, and how do we communicate in this space as fans of different popular culture? We can analyze our role then as an active audience member, or are we, are we receiving without any contest? Are we receiving without any engagement? I believe not, because as fans, we integrate what we watch into our lives. We integrate what we see, what we hear into our lives. And maybe this is a good point for you to analyze. Do you do that when you are looking at your mobile phone usage, for instance, or when you're preparing for looking at the other analysis in the latest semester in your last essay? Do you partake heavily in items of popular culture aided by various communications technologies?